Hello, friends. Thank you for being here with us on our Fiction in Real Life podcast, video podcast. We're so happy to be here. Heather B. Moore, Jennifer Moore, Jen Geigle Johnson, and Julie Daines. And as usual, we have stories to share today. Stories that are true, but we question, are they really? And would we book them? And so we're going to talk about that today. But first, you notice I'm waving a little flag. Today is our Revolutionary War themed show. And today, this week, and in 2 weeks, we're going to do kind of a continuation of the same. So we're really excited about that. We have a giveaway. It is actually from the dark ages of my very first book I ever wrote. There it is, The Nobleman's Daughter. So the reason I wanted to give this one away today is because it has a real life fiction in real life story in it. So it's hard to believe, but back then in the Regency era, there was actually a gathering of about 60,000 people, and in which the government kind of freaked out, and they had it started a stampede of people, and there were 60,000 people gathered, and there were people dying and people getting trampled, and it was violent, and there were riots. And so I don't know, my first Regency novel fits very well with our fiction in real life theme. So commenters on any of our sites, any of our Facebook pages, and on our YouTube channel can enter to win a print copy of that. So I've got one for you. And we're going to share a couple stories today. I think first we'll hear from Julie. Are you good, Julie? Okay, let's start.
I am ready.
Okay.
So I've got this story of a girl named, I've got some notes here because I have a terrible memory. Her name is Sybil Ludington, and her father was the colonel in New York City during the Revolutionary War. He was a colonel of the local militia, and they lived in an area near Danbury. And in Danbury was where they had, in this like little warehouse thing, they had all the Americans, the patriots, had all their supplies and ammunitions and everything stored there. And they had gotten word that the British were going to attack that warehouse and get their supplies. So the dad, it's a little unclear whether she did this of her own volition or her dad asked her to do it. But so Sybil Ludington, at the age of 16 years old, on this horribly rainy night, gets on her horse and rides 40 miles with this stick, spurring her horse on. She rides 40 miles south, around, and all the way back to rally all of these 400 men that were in her dad's militia. And even though they didn't quite make it there in time to stop the raid on Danbury, they were able to march after the British Army and catch up with them at Ridgefield and regain their stuff. But anyway, just to put this in context, Paul Revere rode 12.5 miles and was captured. And Sybil Ludington rode 40 miles and evaded capture.
She was 16.
So that's the story of Sybil. Now, I know that there's disputations about whether this actually happened or not. Some people say it did, some people say it didn't, and there's not a huge amount written about it, which is kind of sad. But the Daughters of the American Revolution have put up all the statues and opened like a visitor center, and they say it happened, so I believe it did. So that's the story of Sybil Ludington. It's pretty amazing, actually, I think. And it's a little sad that, nobody really knows about it.
So I'm with the Daughters of the American Revolution. If they say yes, it happened.
Right. That's what I think.
There's a statue. It obviously happened.
There's several statues. There's several statues about her. There's a few references to this in some of the journals, but there's just not tons written about it. And so people are like, well, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe her horse was named Star, maybe it wasn't,
Those doubters.
Right?
Okay, well, we need to decide whether we would book it. I'm going with true. And let's see, Heather, would you book this story?
Yeah, I think it would be awesome. I don't know if I personally would write it, but I think it would be awesome to have her in a story, because I feel like, just like what we talked about, it's important not to forget our history and to not obviously just let it kind of disappear. So I love that story. I'd love to go and see all of her statues and stuff too.
I so agree. Jennifer, what about you?
I would book it. I love it. I love that she was 16. I cannot imagine. I don't let my 16-year-old drive, out of like out of our city, like out of our little town. I cannot imagine. Can you imagine a 16-year-old just like
No, but at that age, 16-year-olds were already, getting married.
they were
True,
handling
yeah.
it. I remember reading something about that Henry Longfellow poem, that "Listen, my children, and you will hear the midnight ride" of Paul Revere. And the reason that he's so famous is because his name rhymes really easily in poems. Because there were all these other people that did stuff, but then like Luddington, it doesn't. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. I would book it. She sounds super cool.
That's awesome. What about you, Julie?
Oh, I would totally book it. In fact, I already did book it last night while I was thinking. And I'm like, what if she wrote out and she, one of the reasons she wrote out was because, this guy that she had a huge crush on was part of the militia and she wanted to warn him. But then she didn't want him to go to war because she didn't want him to die, and I had this whole thing planned out. It was good.
I would read it if you book it.
Maybe someday. I think there are actually children's books about her.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure there's things like that out there. Yeah.
It's just so important. So I would book it if only to tell her story. When we were talking about Revolutionary War heroes and women, and it's getting better, but for a time we didn't know much about women during that time. I mean, as far as written word, as a kid, I thought the women stayed home and cooked meals and sewed the flag. That's all I know about the women of the Revolutionary War. And cooking meals and staying home is great, and sewing the flag is great. But there's so many more things that happened, and so many more awesome women during that time that we're finally starting to tell their stories. So just for that reason alone, I believe her story needs to be told. So,
I believe that she did this. And so the thing that's kind of a little bit sad is what you were just alluding to, Jen, that there's so much written about Paul Revere and all this stuff, but she just did what she did, maybe because her dad just told her to go do it. And so she just did it. And so people didn't really think it needed to be, written about in a big deal, that she just did the thing and then that was it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I've been looking back. I don't know. Maybe it just means we all need to be better at record keeping, right? There's probably things that we feel like are just normal, but it'd be good if the story was told. It's so good. So good. We're all going to book a Sybil story in our fantasy life of having free time to do everything we say we'd book, right? So I think that's fun. Okay, good. The next one we were going to talk about today, I actually have this story, and it's Anna Smith Strong. So if you've seen the Netflix series Turn, you know a little bit about Anna Smith Strong. It's the historical facts in that show are a little bit, embellished or distorted, and there's no romance the way it's presented and stuff like that. But there was a woman, and she lived in Setauket, New York, not Long Island area, and she was recruited into the Culper spy ring, the George Washington. They worked for George Washington. That's a good little picture of her. And you know what? General Washington did not even really know who was in this ring and wasn't really aware that Anna Smith Strong did what she did. And so it was so secret and so carefully guarded that she probably didn't get a lot of credit for what she did. And it's kind of cool to tell her story after the fact. So there's a lot going on with this ring and with Anna, but the thing that people are certain that her main job was she was left alone. Her husband and kids had moved to be safe, and she was kind of guarding the homestead, as a lot of the women did. And the soldiers came to live in her house, and she would do their laundry, and she would place them out on the line. And there were some caves on the edge of the shore, and people would travel from the Connecticut across the Sound over to Setauket and back. And when one particular guy would come, the British were looking for him because he was known to be a spy and a rebel. And when he would come, she would put a certain amount of handkerchiefs on the line to tell him which cave he could go to. And then the spies who lived in New York would know where to find him. And so that was her messaging. It was a very simple thing. She had a black petticoat on the line, and she would have a certain amount of handkerchiefs, and they would know which cave that they could then pass information to. So she did a lot of other things. And of course, living with the soldiers was privy to information and things. But that one simple help made sure that nobody in that Culper spy ring died. They were all safe. So it's coming off the heels of Nathan Hale, who was hanging on a tree, and he's the one who purportedly said, "I regret I have but one life to give for my country." So he was a spy, and it was kind of a failure situation. So they were really careful, and largely due to Anna and her efforts, they were able to pass a lot of information from New York back to General Washington. They're credited with huge success on the American side, and I'm actually writing a book about this, and so I'm not going to keep going because there are spoilers. But let's talk about Anna Smith Strong and whether or not we would book it. I obviously answered that question, yes, because I am. But what about you, Julie? Would you?
Well, I am not going to rain on your parade.
You're already raining on it. I feel rain.
So I will leave it to you to tell that story. And I very sincerely look forward to reading this book. I'm very intrigued. It sounds like it's going to be awesome. And it's honestly just another reminder how women just doing their thing got so underestimated by the men of what they could actually do to help their side, to help their cause.
Yeah.
They just kind of, she's doing our laundry. Underestimate everything,
It's true. And what about you, Jennifer?
I would book it. I need to be on the screen. I kind of did already. I wrote a story about the Culper spy ring, but it wasn't called the Culper spy ring. So yeah, I love that. It's one of my favorite things. And the movie or the whatever miniseries Turn, I also love that. So I wish that you hadn't told me that it wasn't accurate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, Hollywood made it really good. They
probably just switched things around timeline-wise to make them fit better into the story.
And George Washington was so cool in it. He was the best character.
He's so cool in general,
that's for sure the real true part.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
George Washington was cool. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Because we know he was. So okay, done. All right. And Heather, what would you do?
I don't know. I mean, obviously I wouldn't book it if you've done it, if you're working on it, but I don't know if I would ever write Revolutionary War, but I do really like to read those stories. So maybe I would just be a big book it reader for them. But yeah. So I love that story. I love all the little things that were kind of secret that were also underestimated because the women did it, which is very funny and ironic, but
yeah.
And the tension involved when you've got soldiers living in your house and knowing that people are hanged for being a spy, and like there's so much at stake, and bless all the women. It's happened more than just to Anna. They were left taking care of homes with soldiers living in their house. I mean, they were in danger all the time, really.
It's a tremendous amount of courage.
Yeah. So it's fun to be able to tell their story, and it's fun to share it with all of you. So this leads into our next Fiction in Real Life episode. So we are now in 2 weeks, you're going to hear an episode about a lot of the different spy methods and intrigue and things they did to pass messages. They were very clever. So that's what our next episode is. So look forward to that. Remember our giveaway, The Nobleman's Daughter. And always, always, you can send us all your ideas and stories and funny, quirky things that happen. We'd love to hear any of them. Local legends, funny proposals, all the weird and quirky. That's us. Fiction in Real Life. So fictionirlauthors@gmail.com. Send it our way or reach out to us however you want. Please comment, support, spread the word. You get entered to win a book. And I think that's it. Let's join next time on Fiction
in
Real
Life.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Bye, everyone.